Hello, this is Hooked by Happenstance. I'm Kendra, and I guess it's time for some crafty considerations. This is my new solution to New Year's resolutions. Basically, this whole series is kind of taking place of what used to be Sunday Sunrises, which is how I dealt with my crafty to-do lists, and in large part, I just use as a means to talk about to-dos of any sort, but on topics that I'm willing to talk about, like crafts. So, I should just preface this by saying, don't take any of this to sound as though I am, feeling some undue stress about my making in a way that is, weird or over the top. I understand. I'm doing this stuff because it's fun, but I also think that these topics bring up a lot of things that we can discuss that apply to many areas of our life, but are much easier to talk about when we talk about them in terms of the things that we make. So, last time I talked to you in one of these videos, I told you I was going to clear the space on the wall behind me that had gotten all covered up with many layers of things, calendars and tapestries that had to move out of other places, and just a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff I had to peel off that wall. I peeled it all down till the wall was clear. And then I have refilled it up with a new on the hook list, basically. Though it's not just what's on my hook. I am keeping track of more than that as far as artistic endeavors go, because I end up with a lot of irons in the fire sometimes. And I just don't remember them all. And I also tend to just focus at any given time on the artistic area of my life that I'm focusing on, like, at that moment. So, if I'm sitting down to crochet and I'm, not making progress or things are not going well, I will forget that I spent several hours earlier in the day writing or painting or whatever, even like cooking, that I did a making activity and it was successful. It'll float right out of my head. So, I am keeping track of all of those areas. And it's kept track of in like 3 segments. So this is just here because it's a painting that's in progress. And it had been over here and it just needed a place to live. So it's just on the wall temporarily, but it will be moving. So this bottom section is the things that are on my hook or artistic projects I'm doing. Because there's crochet stuff and there's cross stitch stuff and there's painting stuff. And there's also, I guess it's a multimedia thing. It's a sketchbook project from the Brooklyn Art Library, which just became a nonprofit organization this last week, which is very exciting, which is a organization where you can purchase a sketchbook and you fill it out to your heart's content, you mail it back by the due date, and then your sketchbook lives in perpetuity at a free museum in Brooklyn, as well as going on, if you turn it in on time, which so far I have done, then it goes on a little traveling exhibit the following year, and so it will be in multiple cities. So, I did complete my sketchbook, my large sketchbook that was due the 1st of February, and it will be making the rounds, and it will also be, I picked the version that's digitized, so it will be in a digital format at some point, and when it is, I'll share that. So, no matter where you are in the US or the world, you can view it. You can see and enjoy or mock or whatever you want to do my artwork. So, that is the thing that has happened. So, that, like I say, this is like the on the hook list. These are the things that I'm actively working on. Hooking, cross stitching. I actually have a mini sketchbook, which is a tiny one, which is due by the 5th of March, that I need to get working on. Today, I just figured out exactly what I'm going to do, and I'm real excited, but I just have to do it. So then we move on to the top half, which is all the things that I finished. When I finish something, but have not yet talked about it on a podcast, it moves to the top. And my thinking is that when I reach about 10-ish items, I will then make a podcast. That way, podcasts will come out when they come out, but there will always be a healthy amount of content for that. And I don't have to worry about, a calendar schedule. Instead, I can worry about just doing it when I have enough stuff to talk about, right? Now, as you can see, there are more than 10 things up there right now, and that is because I have been, like, elbows deep in working on the projects I talked about in the last podcast. I talked about the Warm and Smooshy pattern, which was the cowl I was working on, and that I was going to have it out by the end of that week. And I was going to. The pattern was complete by the end of that week. However, I did not take pictures because we had an ice storm and I could barely get to my car, let alone walk to any part of my yard that was remotely pretty to take pictures. And then everything started to melt and nothing was remotely pretty. And then I went out of town for a week. So here we are, and I have a lovely cold sore on my face, which I just don't choose to document in the pictures on my pattern. So that's going to wait. But more importantly than all of the reasons I could not get the pictures done, in the process of putting together the Warm and Smooshy pattern, I decided that I wanted to do a number of things in the same vein, using kind of a similar concept but different mathing and different items. And I want to put all those patterns out. And I could put them out one at a time, but I was concerned that if people want to purchase them, that they would then purchase individual patterns all the way, when ultimately I think I'm just going to put them all in an ebook. So I want to give people the option to do either one and save you some money along the way if I can. So I am finishing all of the patterns and they will be released at once as both individual purchase in a blog format on Patreon in Peachless Pattern Pile, and also as an ebook, which will have all of them together for a slightly discounted rate of buying each individual pattern. So I am working on that. There will be somewhere between 3 and 5 patterns included. I am not going to tell you when it's going to be done, and that is the main crafty consideration I have had in the last couple weeks of thinking about how I make things and how it all functions in my brain. So if you've been around for any period of time, you will know that I perpetually miss deadlines. I come at you with the very best of intentions of when I'm going to make things available publicly. And then, because of life circumstances, some of them very small and like relatively insignificant, some of them very big, I just can't get things all together in time. So why do I keep making like time commitments on when I'm going to release things? I could just stop doing that, right? Like, and I have gone through periods of time where I've been like, I'm just going to stop saying I'm going to get things done at a certain time, because then I don't do it, and then I feel bad, and then I think it makes me look bad, and all the things. However, the way my brain works, my brain can't fully, like, get on board with making the final thing happen and accepting that it's, like, honed in, good enough, this is the way to go. I can't stop thinking about all the other options and things that it could add or change until it has a deadline. And that deadline needs to be looming and or past before I can just like sit down and be like, you just go with it. You need to just go with it. So I think I'm just going to continue to tell you things will be available at a certain time, and then they will become available when they become available. I don't mean to tell you things in a dishonest way. It really is not my intention. And it really is the thing that is required to light the fire under me to get things finished. Because I was on track to get the Warm and Smooshy done. And I did have it done, minus the pictures. But then it grew. The project grew. And I think you all are going to like the scope and the changes and all the ways it's grown. And anyways, even though people have asked me where it is and if it's available, I don't actually know that anybody's going to make it. That is the funny thing about designing patterns and releasing them out to the world. I think about this a lot too. About just because I want to make something, and just because I want to make something and share it, so like design a thing and then release that, doesn't mean the world needs it. Doesn't mean that anybody is actually going to make the item. Even if they have told you that, like, I need this in my life, or I really want this, or whatever, all of the things that are said, this is awesome, I love it. Hearts on Instagram do not equal sales. Hearts on Instagram do not equal legitimate interest in making the item. they just, I don't know, they're people sending good vibes somewhere. And that's good. It has its purpose. But you cannot confuse the two. Likes are not sales. And, I mean, lots of people do these things without sales in mind. But there comes a point where, you know, to trade the amount of time it takes, there needs to be some monetary benefit, because that time you have a limited amount of, and you're taking it away from other things that could be either making income and or, you know, just part of your non-artistic life. So, I don't know. I don't know if that is bad or makes, I don't know. It's where my mind is right now, is thinking about that whole balancing of profitability, but also I refuse to make a thing or sell a thing just because it's what everybody else is doing and thus profitable at a moment. Just not the way I function. I know what I like. I know what kinds of things I find interesting, and I assume that at least some of you find those same things interesting. So I try to just put out in the world the things that I would be looking for. I was looking at this artist that I've read her books since I was 13. I think I got her first book. And it's like a journal. Sabrina Ward Harrison. That is her name. I almost forgot. But her book, it's on my shelf with all the other inspiring books that I don't look at nearly enough. And she did a course this last year about writing your own book. Which I did not do. But I did see one of her posts about it, which was talking about the whole concept of her course was to write the book that you want to see in the world. To make the art that you would have, like, you know, that you would resonate with and don't feel like you're getting exposure to. Those are the things you should be making. So that's what I'm doing. I'm making the kinds of patterns that I wish I found more of, which are things that use incredibly simple stitches put together in consistently changing patterns. I do not enjoy patterns where I can memorize the whole thing in 3 rows. That does not keep my brain nearly busy enough. But I also usually am not down to do super intricate lace where I have to look at every little stitch, like be super in it, because that can only be done in certain lighting and under certain noise conditions, which rarely exist in my life. So I prefer something in the middle where it is simple things but constantly changing. Like doing intervals. You're just constantly changing, but they're all things that you already know how to do. So that is kind of where my thoughts on designing, and I've been very in that space and doing lots of tinkering, and just, it's been fun. I have been enjoying the process. The process is just taking a little bit longer than anticipated. And, you know, in all of that, I also went out of town. I drove to Ohio for a writing retreat, and so that was really, really good. And it gave me a lot of thoughts about creating and making and artistry and writing and the labels that we put on those things and ourselves, and there will be more about that. Still chewing on a lot of those ideas, but lots of thoughts. And all of this work on the stuff that will eventually become all of these patterns and ebook and such has given me a lot of good stitching time to mull those things over, which is another thing I like to get out of a pattern. I like a pattern where I can listen to an audiobook or a podcast or whatever, so that, like, Kendra in my brain can sit down and, like, listen to her show. Her stories are on. She's busy. And then the other Kendra in my head can count for me, and I just get to sit there and enjoy myself because she's quiet and taken care of. I give her a little snack and she's good. So, anyways, I promise I'm not nuts. I just really like metaphors. Really like metaphors. Okay, I am going to go and get back to working on the next piece of this design puzzle that I'm working on. So to let you know the crafty considerations that were going on. There's some new things. I keep having ideas as I'm doing this too of the next thing that I want to make. So we'll see what comes up after this. And there will be a podcast in the not too distant future documenting all the things that I've made because, like I say, there's more than 10 things done on the wall behind me. But I would kind of like to have this stuff all wrapped up so that when I tell you about the items, I can also tell you where to get the pattern because I know you're going to ask. I know you're going to want to know where it is. And so I want to be able to have a definitive time and place to point you. All right. Hope you all are having a lovely time working on whatever it is you're working on, even if what you're working on is sitting there doing nothing. Soak that up. And I will see you all next time. Bye!